Do you need help in your relationship? Or maybe your relationship is going great and you just want to strengthen the bond between the two of you. In any case, tune in to Ask Moma E, a show intended to assist in creating and keeping the strongest relationships. Join and watch Moma E, the relationship expert, using her wisdom to guide others into forming stronger bonds.
Everybody, this is Moma E. And just by way of introduction, I am the founder of In Him Marriage and Family Ministry. It's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to encourage healthy relationships. For about almost 2 decades now, I have offered public events as well as one-on-one counseling. There is a need, I think, for a manner in which we can teach the skills that are required in order to have healthy, happy marriages / relationships. You know, I used to say just marriage, but I think that even before we say I do, there needs to be some kind of teaching. Isn't it interesting that just about everything that we have to do in life requires some kind of education? I don't mean classes. I don't necessarily mean that you're going to get a degree in it. But, you know, to get a license, you have to take a driver's test. To get a fishing license, there requires a certain amount of knowledge that's needed. So for a relationship that we say is going to be for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, why is it that we don't put the effort and the energy into investing into that kind of relationship? So that's my passion. It's what I was called to do. After 50 years of a relationship, and I say that because my husband and I were actually married for 30 years. He decided that he wanted to try singlehood again. So we were divorced for 7 years and then remarried for another 10. So when I talk about a relationship, I'm talking about all of that, you know, the good, the bad, so that I try to share with you those things that I've been fortunate enough to learn. Hopefully you won't have to go down some of those paths. So today we're going to spend a little time evaluating our relationships. I want you to maybe grab pencil and paper or use your phone and go to the memo, however you can make a note of the kinds of things that I'd like you to talk to with your mate, your significant other. I want you to ask the right questions, you know. So in this conversation that you're going to have with that person that you love, there are certain questions that I want both of you to answer together, okay? All right, so let's start. The first question that I recommend for an evaluation is to describe how much significant time you spend together as a couple and when you spend that time. Why is that important? A lot of times I find that after couples actually get together, after they've gotten married, they get relaxed, they get comfortable with each other, and you both go to work or you go to school and you do whatever it is that you're going to do. But at the end of the day, one person's watching one TV, other person has another device, and there's no time spent together. Can you take it from Moma E? Just the fact that I have lived now, well, let's see, I've got children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So there are 4 generations behind me. It doesn't mean that I know everything, but it just means I've learned a lot. And why would you want to have to fall in a manhole if somebody could tell you ahead of time that the manhole is going to be there 5 feet down the road? That's my job, just to warn you of what could happen. So if you ask yourself, how much time do we actually spend together? I mean, actually enjoying or being in each other's presence. Now, there certainly are times when you're not going to be talking or doing anything, but it is vital, it is important that two people who are working on a meaningful relationship must spend time together. All right, so you're going to jot down, that's your first question for your conversation, is how much significant time do we spend together? And what do we do in that time that we have together? Okay, next question. Describe 5 behaviors or a task that your spouse does that you appreciate. Now, why is that important? Well, I don't think any of us want to not be appreciated. That probably was a run-on sentence, but you get what I'm saying. Nobody likes to do things for another person and they never ever say thanks. They never say dinner was good. They never say thanks for doing the laundry. We take each other for granted, and can I just tell you that love cannot last when we take each other for granted. So if you were to jot down 5 things, that doesn't seem like a lot, but I don't know, when you start really thinking about what it is that you give to your partner and what he or she gives to you, you ought to be able to write down or to actually recall at least 5 things that that person does for you that you appreciate. Now, after writing down these things that they do, I don't care how small, how minute they are, the fact that another human being thinks enough of you to do those things for you, you are to at least be grateful enough to say thanks. And when I said earlier about us taking each other for granted, that's one of those ways that we do that. We just assume that because one person always cooks, that they have to cook. Well, let me just tell you, nobody has to do anything for us. Okay? My mother, and of course she was from another generation, but she used to preach that to us. Nobody owes you anything. So just because you think that a person is in love with you, that they owe it to you, not so. So I want you to be able to identify at least 5 things that your mate, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever that person's relationship is with you, what do they do? Do they bring in the mail? Did they hang up your clothes? Did they stop by the cleaners? All of those things that we tend to assume the other person is supposed to do, starting today, I want you to make a commitment to yourself and to that other person that you will never again take them for granted. Okay, question number 3 in your evaluation. List 5 personal qualities of your spouse that you appreciate. Now, this is different from the things that they do for you, okay? We were talking before about the task that they might do for you, picking up things, going places, doing things. Now we want to talk about certain characteristics, certain traits that you appreciate about that person. For instance, is the person just genuinely kind? I know you take that for granted, but everybody's not. So that if somebody in your life, whether it, again, be someone that you're married to, I even tell singles that live together, there could be 2 females that live together as roommates. But even at that, you owe it to that other person not to take them for granted. So I want you to list 5 personal qualities about that person that you appreciate. Maybe they're funny. They've got a funny sense of humor, and you can count on them to keep you laughing. That's a quality or a trait that you appreciate and that you would miss if they weren't here. Let me interject. My husband, as I said, we have a 50-year long relationship. And in those last 10 years that we remarried and worked on part two of our marriage, he died, transitioned 3 years ago. As a matter of fact, July 29th made that 3-year anniversary. And I have to admit that it's been challenging for me this year. I don't know why so much this year, but it has been. But you can't have had 50 years with a person and not miss them. And what I do now is I think about all of these things that I'm telling you to do. If the person wasn't here anymore, and you wouldn't be able to say, man, I appreciate the fact that he always made me laugh, that we always went out to dinner. One of the things that my husband said to me when we recommitted to each other was how much he missed iced tea. Now, that could sound really crazy, and it sounds as though it's insignificant, but during the time that we were apart, we had a chance to think about those things that we would miss about each other. A simple thing like someone who always had fresh brewed iced tea in the house when you got home. Don't take that for granted, because the day will come when, by whether it be because of death or separation or whatever the cause might be, if the day comes that you can't tell that person thank you, I don't want you to regret not having said it when they could hear it. That sounds morbid, so I'm gonna move on. But it's serious enough that it is important that you learn now, that you learn early, how to appreciate what the other person does and says for you. All right, question number 4. How frequently do you affirm or reinforce your spouse for the behaviors and qualities that we mentioned in question 2 and 3? I wrote these down because quite often I do sessions with couples who are planning to get married, people who are already married, and these are the types of things that I try to encourage us to go through. How frequently do you affirm? Do you tell the person, your spouse, do you affirm the behaviors and qualities that we've talked about in those questions above? It's one thing for you to identify that a person does things, but don't stop there. Don't tell your girlfriend, don't tell your sister, tell that person. They have a right to hear out of your mouth that you appreciate them. I know that, again, we just think that we ought to know. I was talking to someone once, it was a male, and I said, how often do you tell your wife that you love her? And he said, well, I told her that I love her when we first got together, and I told her I'd tell her if I ever changed my mind. Well, that might have been funny to him. I'm not sure that that's laughable, because she needs to hear you say, I love you. You know, those of us who are believers in Christ know that the Lord requires that we worship him, that we praise him. And what those words mean in our spiritual life is that we will tell God what he is to us. We will say, you are a good God. We will say, hallelujah. Those are terms of worship and adoration. I think that as humans, that we need the same thing, that we need to be told, I appreciate you. I love you for what you have done. Our children need to hear us say, you did good today. You know, as human beings, I think too often that we don't do these things because we assume the person ought to know. Can I say that even if they know, Nothing sounds as good as you saying out of your mouth, I love you. I appreciate you. I thank you. I realized that you were tired. You got home from work. You got home from school, and you didn't have to cook, but you did. I appreciate that. The same is true, like if husbands who don't traditionally cook, if they stop by Pizza Hut and bring home pizza, they didn't have to cook it. They just took advantage of the opportunity to make sure that both of us ate. That's worth you saying thank you. So I'm trying to help you get ready for marriage, or if you're already married, my hope is that I will be able to suggest something that you can do to make your relationship even better. Okay, next question for evaluation. List 4 important requests that you have for your spouse at this time. One of the problems, as I see it in marriages, is that we don't communicate with each other. What do I say? Okay, we might say it was hot today, or, I got caught in traffic, or I didn't like what my boss did. You're talking, and that is communication to a degree. But by the time we reach the point where we are married or thinking about marriage, our conversation ought to go beyond that. I think that there are different levels of communication, and the level of communication that you have with somebody at the bus stop is not the same as somebody that you put your hope and trust in and you expect to live with, to grow with, for better or worse. And so when we're talking about having a foundational kind of love, the kind of love that God talks about, the kind of love that is going to carry you through the good time and the bad times, then that person ought to be the person who knows most about you. Your good friend shouldn't be the person that you call when you've got something serious to talk about. If you just found out that you have breast cancer, the person who ought to know and that you ought to trust with that information is your significant other. So when we talk about being able to list the things that you would request of that person, all of us have things that we would like to change. I'm trying to be tactful. There are things about our spouse, about our significant other. There are things about them that don't really please us, okay? No, there isn't a human being in the world who does everything according to what you like. Now, do you owe it to that person to tell them? I think yes. If we are building a relationship that we intend to grow, that I want to be here 5 years from now, I can't allow the stuff about my mate that bothers me to go unsaid. You know how we talk about sweeping stuff under the rug? And before you know it, you've got this big heap in the floor, and everybody's ignoring it like it's not there. The truth of the matter is, it is there. And it's not going to go away because you're ignoring it. In order for the relationship to grow, in order for it to be everything that you dreamed of it being, there's going to come times when you must address it. Now, we'll talk later about how we should address it. There are a lot of times it's not what you say, but how you say it. And if you have allowed stuff to just get on your nerves to the point that now you're irritated and you're frustrated and you're annoyed, and then you approach that person, you know that it's not going to be received well. Because that other person has a right to have you say to them, honey, when you get a minute, when you get some time, I'd like to talk to you about something that's been bothering me. They ought to have at least the respect that you give them. that you give to your doctor's office. You just don't walk in your doctor's office and say, I got something important I want to talk to you about. You make an appointment. Well, if this is a person that you are in love with and you want to talk about something that you feel is significant, give them at least the same respect by saying to them when you feel like it, when you get a moment. Because they could have had a bad day at work too. So to respect them enough to say, can we set a time when we can talk about something? That's how your relationship is going to grow, that person is not going to feel that they have just been taken advantage of, that you never say thank you, that you never appreciate them. And then when you do approach them about something that you would like them to change, you come across negatively, you come across with an attitude and you're sucking your teeth and wringing your neck. Who wants to be approached that way? So when you make a list of the things that you'd like to talk about with that person who matters, because, you know, there are a lot of people who perhaps you could talk to. There are people you could tell it to, but is this somebody who you intend to be with, that you want them to be there, 50 years from now? And I know not a lot of people have 50-year relationships anymore. But can I tell you that there's enough good in having the kind of marriage that God said we could have, the kind that God planned? I often say to us that we act like we thought of marriage, like it was our idea. God created marriage, and what he intended for it to be was not what we're giving back to him. I'm trying to suggest that there are things that we can do, that we can work toward having that kind of marriage that the Bible speaks of. It says that marriage is honorable. Well, what does that mean? In order for me to have an honorable marriage, I've got to work on it. My suggestion to all of you that are listening is that you work on those things that's going to give you the kind of relationship that most of us want. I know we all kind of say, I ain't got to have nobody. And when you broke up with your last mate, I'm glad he gone. Well, I think if we are honest, that's not necessarily true. You might be sick of that person. You might be tired of the way that relationship has gone. But at some point, real soon, you're going to want somebody else in your life. We're made that way. We're created that way, not to be alone. So if we're created to be with someone else, we might as well put the time in, put the work in, put the effort in, so that we don't drag all the baggage that we had in the last relationship into the one that we're working on now. Many times we think that it was the other person's fault. Many times we think that our problem would be solved if we just got a new person, and not recognizing that 9 people down the road, you're on relationship number 10, and you keep thinking, I just can't find my soulmate. I just can't find Mr. Right. Is it possible that it wasn't Mr. Right? It was that you were Miss Wrong. And the things that you have not fixed from relationship number 10, 8, 7, 6, if you will evaluate that, maybe there were things that you did that could have been better. Maybe even if you start to fully identify, what could I have done that would have made that last relationship better? So that's what we're doing today in terms of evaluating what's happening in your relationship in the hope that you can make it better. All right, so we said you're going to list 4 important requests that you have. Next question is, how frequently do you make these requests? I'm not going to answer that one. I want you to think about, do you mention it so often and in such a way that's negative that you have become a nag? That one is for you to answer about you. There are several scriptures in Proverbs that talks about a nagging wife. And when I was going through a period before we got divorced, and, can I admit to being ugly? When we are hurt, when we are disappointed, very often our emotions will make us act unkind, will make you act ugly. And the Lord instructed me to read some passages in Proverbs, and I don't have time today to go over them, but I'm sure we'll get to it. But in many cases, it talks about the wife being a nagging wife. One of the scriptures said, it's better to be on the rooftop than in the house with a nagging wife. When I started to identify that my husband would rather be anywhere else but in the house with me, I was then responsible for making the change. Can I suggest to every woman out there that if you can identify that you have become a nagging wife, recognize and maybe look in your Bible and look in the concordance and find those scriptures that describe us as nagging, cantankerous, and all of those words. Nobody wants to come into a house that we call home and we're coming in to someone who's a nag. So how frequently do you make the request, and how do you make the request? Last question is, after you made certain requests of your significant other, and I'm saying your husband because I guess I have more experience being a wife, but it applies to both genders. The person in your life that does things that doesn't make you happy. I want to know, have you brought it to their attention? How many times have you brought it to their attention? And lastly, what was their response? Maybe they don't want to change. Maybe they have no intention of changing. That takes us to a different conversation. I'm assuming that we are talking about two people who love each other and want to have the best that God has to offer. If, in fact, that we are sure that the person is here with me because they want to be, and I'm here because I want to be, then we have made the commitment to do all that we can do to make that happen. Contact me. You can email me at askmamae@gmail.com. We're going to start a segment that we're going to call Mama E's Mailbox. We're going to deal with some of the questions that you might have, but I want you to evaluate where you are, where your relationship is, and how you can make it better. We're looking forward to really delving into many of the topics that have been a matter of concern for you, and we're going to work on it because we believe that marriage can be a good thing. This has been Mama E, and I look forward to sharing with you again next time.
Do you need help in your relationship? Or maybe your relationship is going great and you just want to strengthen the bond between the two of you. In any case, tune in to Ask Mama E, a show intended to assist in creating and keeping the strongest relationships. Join and watch Mama E, the relationship expert, using her wisdom to guide others into forming stronger bonds.
The office of the bishop is more of a lifestyle than a 9-to-5 job. Hi, I'm Bishop Michael Johnson, and I'm the Chancellor of the Episcopal Academy. You know, although it is important that a bishop has a functional and valuable office with a staff, but that's not what makes us who we are. It is the inner life of Christ working in us so we can affect the world around us. Join us for the new podcast, as we discuss the Episcopal way.
Your financial support keeps the ministry alive. You can be a blessing by sowing via Cash App today at $TeachJax, or you can text to give at 833-481-1524 and text the word.
So you've been watching the show. Would you like to be a content provider yourself and develop a show for the Inspire Network? Please give us a call today at 904-389-5592 or go to www.connecttv.info to submit a show idea.
Have a praise report or a testimony of how any of the programming at the Inspired Network has been a blessing to you? Please go to www.myprayerrequest.info. Click on the tab Testimony and submit it today. The IPC prayer team would love to know how effective the ministry is being to you.
Do you love video production? Would you like to have a career in video production but don't know where to start? Your problem is you have no one to teach you.
To sign up for this 2-day media camp that will offer advanced media technology training for creative minds, you will learn all the ins and outs of production and media. Go to www.learntv.today. Dr. Jackson and his team will bring 30 years of a wealth of knowledge to the table. Whether you're a beginner or advanced media professional, you will go to another level.